No Scottie Barnes and no problem for the Toronto Raptors in Milwaukee. Let's talk about it.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sport podcast network covering your team every day. And we're coming to you live after the Raptors 122-94 win against the Milwaukee Bucks on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi, Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years now with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you. And with me is Duane Notice, aka Dino, professional basketball player and analyst. Duane has represented Canada. He's been part of the Raptor system with the 905, and he's still hooping professionally in leagues like the CEBL. And on tonight's show, we're going to talk about how the Raptors figured out the Bucks zone even without Scottie Barnes. We're going to break down Darko's decision to go double point guard in the second half. We'll get some thoughts from our resident pro in a segment we like to call Take Notice, and then we'll wrap things out by handing out our player of the game. And Duane, I think this was very clear that what the challenge was for the Raptors coming into this game. How were they going to beat a surging Milwaukee Bucks team without Scottie Barnes, who was out for personal reasons? We haven't gotten an update there. Hopefully everything is okay on his front and he comes back shortly to the team. But entering this game, Milwaukee had won 6 of the last 7 games. And in terms of facing the Raptors, this is the team that plays the most zone defense in the NBA, which has obviously been a struggle for the Raptors for much of the season. And now especially so without Scottie Barnes, who's obviously a big interior pressure man. He's a big mid-range playmaker. And obviously the Raptors missing when he's not there. He's only missed 1 game this season and they had lost. So the Raptors very clearly in this game had to make their shots. They had to especially do that from outside because they weren't going to be able to get that rim pressure without Scottie Barnes. I believe only 2 of their first 10 shots came at the rim against Miles Turner. So they had to hit shots from outside. And after starting 0 of 11 from deep, they finally caught fire in this game and made some of their jumpers. They hit 5 threes in a row. They end up shooting 46% from 3 after that really cold start, finished 16 of 46 from downtown, and they were able to break that Bucks zone defense. Immanuel Quickley and Brandon Ingram scored 32 and 22 points each. They combined for 15 assists. Jakob Poeltl looks like himself again. The bench outworks Milwaukee. Every Raptors who checked in scored. And the Raptors are now 18 and 10 on the road, 34 and 23 on the season, and they're 11 games over 500 for the first time since 2021-22. And again, all of this without Scottie Barnes. A very quality victory, all things considered. Duane, what are your impressions coming out of the win?
A quality victory and an impressive win. For me, this is a good old-fashioned BTB on the road. That's belt to behind action. The Raptors were the aggressors all game. And you mentioned it. Started off with a slow start, but then they found their rhythm. And shout out to them for being aggressive. When other teams are playing zones against them, you mentioned it, you're going to be left open for these shots. You have to take them. If you're not making them, at least still take them because it puts the pressure on the defense to continue to try to be honest. But having multiple threes over, 10 plus threes today's game, I think is one of the factors in why they won the game, shooting the ball pretty well, moving the ball pretty well as well. You saw the team high in assists of like 34 or something like that. I think they were really getting it done when it came to sharing the sugar. So again, attacking the zone through alleviating the pressure by swinging the ball. The ball moves faster than any man. The Raptors did a great job of that. But then also getting it done on the defensive end, right? Like how many times were they able to close the quarter the right way? We saw the second quarter and how they're able to handle that. Then also the third quarter. So getting stops when they needed to. But the fact that everybody contributed today and left their mark on the game, even when some guys weren't shooting the ball well from the field, I think was a great example of the next up mentality from the Raptors. And this was a great win for them going forward, especially without their main guy. I think for a team that fuels you and inspires you when it comes to your confidence, knowing that you can get a road win against a very good team that is, on fire right now recently, and especially being, led by Doc Rivers, who's one of the best schematic coaches in the game. So I think this is a very good victory for the Raptors, and they should feel good about themselves going forward.
Yeah, look, Duane, you say it all the time. Like, who's going to be that next man up, the next man mentality? Who's going to step up? And the Raptors early on in this game looked like what they were going to do was what they've always done when they've struggled this season is like, Brandon Ingram, can you save us? He was hot early in this game. He did settle down a little bit, but they were asking him to make some really, really tough shots. In the first quarter, that's a lot of what their offense really was. Like, who's going to get off a contested jumper and hopefully it's going to get in? It was in the second quarter when, like you said, the energy really shifted when they started generating better looks for themselves. I felt a lot of it was using the off-ball gravity of a guy like Immanuel Quickley and his movement. He wasn't staying still. His energy was great. I think the Raptors were more willing to test a guy like Miles Turner in the second quarter. They got 2 fouls on him towards the end of that quarter, and that was able to really alleviate some of that pressure for them in the paint. And once they started finding ways to kind of get the Bucks moving a little bit, breaking that zone defense by applying some pressure. I think Jamal Shead was actually really good in that second quarter for that when he subbed in. He found Brandon Ingram on a back cut. So instead of sending their big guys flashing in the middle like a CMB or Mamu, they let Jamal Shead, a playmaker, kind of cut middle, and he found guys like Brandon Ingram on a back cut, and then he found Sandro on a cut on the weak side of the zone defense after that. And that got kind of the juice flowing a little bit. And then when you have a guy like Immanuel Quickley, he hit a couple threes, the floodgates open for the Raptors. Like I said, they started 0 of 11 from deep, but you see IQ make a couple really early in that quarter. All of a sudden, the Raptors hit 5 threes in a row, and they end up really catching fire from there. Jakob Poeltl hits 2 threes in the quarter. Sandro hits 2 threes in the quarter. And the Raptors kind of remember that, like, okay, we're getting our quality looks. And like you say all the time, we trust the process and get going. So to your point of like needing guys to step up, I felt like the leadership, especially from Immanuel Quickley, really showed up in this game when they needed it most.
Yeah, it did. And he's a big time player. People forget, obviously, his time with the Knicks. We know how he was able to handle himself on the offensive end. But like you mentioned, him showing up today really, really helped the team get to that victory because, you know, Immanuel Quickley is just so good, especially at using the high ball screen. You mentioned the gravity, but he's able to kind of have a similar effect that Brandon Ingram has, which is attracting so many eyes on the defensive end. When you're able to have that much detail towards you, you're able to make plays for yourself and others. And I think Quickley does a great job of that, especially with his connection with Jakob Poeltl. I think they have a special chemistry involving themselves together in the ball screen. And they had a great play today where I think, you know, we call it the Gortat screen in basketball, where, you know, Jakob Poeltl's big frame is setting a ball screen. And instead of just rolling to the basket looking for the ball, he rolls with the defender on his back and he shields him and seals him, which allows the guard, which is Quickley in that scenario, to get to the basket unimpeded. And I think that was a great job. He kept the defender on his back and kept him in jail. And that was just one of the many plays of Quickley just being an example of igniting the offense by, you know, like you said, just open shots, taking them, making them. You know, he feels good when he's doing that little sidestep, Dame kind of sidestep to the right, shooting those threes. But the fact that he's shooting the ball at a high level, but he's playing at a high level is great for the Raptors. And I think that we're going to talk about it, but that 2-guard front, having 2 guys make great decisions at the end of the game is also a great scenario for the Raptors going forward. They should continue to look at that. But next man up mentality is one of the biggest things the Raptors relied on today. And I also think you talked about them struggling with the shot in the beginning, but then it snowballed into guys just feeling good and making shots after that. As a hooper, it always just takes one. You see, you know, a couple free throws go in, or you see someone like Immanuel Quickley get a wide open tray ball, and it kind of ignites that contagious feeling of everybody, you know, just locking in and shooting it without any pressure and just stepping into their shots. And we saw that when they made, you know, 5 or so threes in a row. So again, the Raptors doing a great job of capitalizing on the teams playing zone against them. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're able to get the victory today.
Yeah, they finished 16 of 46 from downtown. They shoot 7 of 11 from deep in that quarter. Like I said, a couple trade balls from IQ, Jacoby, and Sandro, and it all kind of like just compiled into a very strong quarter for them. They won the second quarter by 14 points. They turned a 5-point deficit into a 9-point lead, and they were able to, like you said, to snowball from there. And Immanuel Quickley led the way. But like you mentioned, there was that double point guard front that really did end up making a major difference for this Raptors team, especially in the second half. So let's get to it now in our turning point of the game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
All right, to set the scene a little bit for our listeners and watchers, the Raptors, again, they take a 9-point lead, I believe, into halftime. And they are playing decent in the third quarter, but the Milwaukee Bucks are able to hit a couple shots. I think the major turning point was when RJ Barrett drives in, turns the ball over after getting stripped. The Bucks go the other way and score. It was a 5-point swing, I think, in total. What was once a double-digit lead is now 3 points. Sorry, Darko Rakovic calls timeout. He subs Jamal Shead in for RJ Barrett, and this is the sequence of what happens next after that. Right after, Jamal Shead hits a 3, assisted by Immanuel Quickley. Quickley then hits a floater, and that lefty fading floater, he was kind of feeling that money today in this game. That was cool from him to see. After that, Quickley hits a 3, assisted by Jamal Shead. Then Shed gets the steal and the layup. All of a sudden, 10-0 run by the Raptors. Bucks call timeout. A 3-point lead is now a 13-point lead, and it was almost entirely at the hands of your 2-point guards. That double PG, that floor general front, where these guys are just good decision makers. One of them has great off-ball gravity and juice. The other one is a very heads-up defender and playmaker, and just the synchronicity of that, combined truthfully with the fact that it just wasn't RJ Barrett's night in this game. Again, we've talked about it. He's kind of slowly reacclimating back from injury. I think that's been a subplot for the Raptors in the second half that we're going to have to pay attention to. But Darko makes a decision to go with Jamal Shed. It clearly pays off. And that double PG lineup, once again, does a lot of good stuff for the Raptors. I believe entering this game, the Raptors were +8 with the two guys sharing the floor together. Can you just talk a bit about what that double PG front did for the guys tonight?
Yeah, it was awesome to see. You talked about their synergy together. When they play together, they have great chemistry. And I think the two-guard front allows for them for, again, 6 turnovers is all the Raptors had in today's game. So that's really good. And I think you got to credit that to that two-guard front. Their decision-making ability is great. They're able to make shots or get shots for other players. And I think, like you mentioned, it Shed on the defensive end, man. It just makes them quicker as well. I'm not saying RJ is not as athletic, but having Shed and Immanuel Quickley in the game makes you a little bit more sharper and quicker on both ends of the floor. But when they're on the same page, I mean, the sky's the limit for the Raptors, and their game management, their clock management, their possession management. Sometimes you got to come down. You got to realize who hasn't touched the ball in a minute, who needs a shot, who needs to get a rhythm. And I think Shed and Quickley are really good at keying in on those moments, whether BI needs to get a shot or we need to get him an easier look, or whether we need to get CMB sealing or rolling to the basket, or whether we need to get Grady Dick a wide open shot. So these guys are really, really tremendous at playing together for themselves, but also for other players. And I think it's an exciting thing to see, especially when they're able to get stops, right? So for them, I think Darko did a great job of mixing it up and showing the Bucks that look again, and it definitely paid off. But it doesn't help, again, when RJ is still trying to get back to his normal self. So hopefully game by game, he can continue to improve. But it was a tough shooting night, but still like to see him continue to be aggressive, which is awesome. But again, that two-guard, point guard front is like a cheat code for the Raptors when they use it the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're not implementing it out of desperation necessarily. It's an adjustment within the game. Again, the Raptors, a lot of this game, they spent it adjusting to what the Bucks were doing. And when you don't have that reliance of a guy like Scottie Barnes to figure that stuff in real time, you really do have to lean on coaching to figure some of this stuff out in that sense when you don't have your star player necessarily. And again, to Darko's credit, it was a really good adjustment. It was right after a turnover by RJ Barrett, and he didn't ice RJ Barrett out of the lineup. RJ played later in the game. He got in there for the fourth quarter. He was still able to get to the line for 4 free throws, so he was trying to do what he could. It was just a tough shooting night for him, who finishes 2 of 10 from the field. But that adjustment in that moment was momentum changing for the Raptors. And that's one of those moments where you can look back at as like that was a key coaching decision where the Raptors were able to capture momentum. And it's one of those things where it builds trust for your guys, it builds trust for your coaching staff, and it ends up just like you said before, just snowballing in this quality win for them. And they really needed it, especially when you look at what's coming up for the Raptors. A back-to-back against the Thunder and the Spurs. You're going to have to do everything you can there. Again, we don't know the status of Scottie Barnes going into it. So picking up this victory, the Raptors, I believe, are now 23-7 against teams below 500. We talked about it last time. Stacking wins. And in a moment like that, where your lead is down to 3, very much things could turn on you really quickly. Again, with a hot shooting team like the Bucks, who have Cam Thomas and Kevin Porter Jr., 2 guys who take a ton of tough shots, who can make them on a whim. I believe both of them started 4 of 4 from the field as well. Like, those guys can really heat up quick. So when one of them makes a shot like that, for Darko to have the presence of mind to call that timeout and make that decision, just like an A+ job from him tonight.
Yeah, great job from him. I mean, Darko, you speak about it, but look how active he was off the bench, right? We saw him when Grady Dick, we thought that he either, well, I saw the film, and I know I got LASIK a couple of years ago, so my vision is not as horrible as some other people out here, but I saw clearly that he got fouled twice, once on the gather and then again on the release, but they ended up overturning the call, saying that it wasn't goaltending. That was the original call that they made. And I thought it was just great to see Darko off the bench and caring about those things, especially no matter what the deficit was and how much their lead was against the Bucks. Like, to still see him coach with the same energy as a player, that is something that makes you want to run through a brick wall for a coach when he has that same type of energy and he's consistent all game on defense. He's also happy for guys on offense. So just him just imploring his guys to play harder, I think, is one of the reasons why the Raptors are so good when it comes to them having that next man up and mentality and guys trying to be a star in their own roles because they have the trust from Darko. Like you said, a guy like RJ comes down, he makes a turnover, but he's not iced out for the rest of the game. He's still able to get back in the game and have his opportunity to, play again. So for him, I think Darko is definitely doing a great job when it comes to making adjustments on the fly. And it's definitely tough when you don't have Scottie in the game and you're not having a guy like him who can quarterback and manage things at that moment in that particular time. But again, Darko and the coaching staff doing a great job of thinking of solutions in real time to help the Raptors get the win.
Yeah, and another guy who did a really great job tonight was Jakob Poeltl, looking like himself again. So when we return on the Raptors postcast, Duane and I are going to talk about Jakob Poeltl, and then we're also going to hand out our player of the game. So stay tuned. All right, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and instantly get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. So whether that's making every dunk, every dime, and every board, it's that much more exciting with Prize Picks, which is why it's America's #1 app for sports picks. It's simple to play. You just have to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections. And if your picks are right, you can cash in. So choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they've got features like early payouts and flex play, so you've got options while the games are still happening. It surprised me how easy it was to get started. I just downloaded the app, and within minutes, I had built my first lineup. And I also love the social feature where you can see what others are playing and copy their lineups with one click. Hopefully, you picked the Raptors over in a lot of these categories tonight because most of them were on fire, and it was great, especially Immanuel Quickley, who finished with 32 points. And Prize Picks is also available in all 50 states, so it's easy for anyone to jump in. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you a chance to turn that dream into a reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. Personally, I love features this time of year. And again, I'm banging the drum. Scottie Barnes, Defensive Player of the Year. I'd maybe look at the odds on that. Hopefully it's a good shout for him. But whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now you can not only pick cash, you don't only just have to cash in, you can also get sent to the NBA Finals with your picks. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip for 2 to the NBA Finals. So play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. I worked with a TurboTax expert last year, and I will absolutely be doing it again because they made the process so simple. You just upload your documents, you go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app, giving you real peace of mind. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just make sure you file by February 28th. So take taxes off to your plate and get back to your life by visiting turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors in the morning to get more in-depth analysis of this 112-94 Raptors win on the road against the Milwaukee Bucks. And now it's time for a take notice segment of the game. And just like last time, I decided to take the lead on this because I was very excited to show some love to Jakob Poeltl, who looked like himself again for the very first time since returning from injury. Now, he didn't have a pop-out stat line. He finishes with 6 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals on 3 of 4 shooting through 25 minutes a game. I believe he is still on that minutes restriction. But just overall, his activity, his confidence, and just his mobility more than anything really popped out to me in this game. Duane, Last game, he actually went without a rebound the whole game. So for him to have 8 rebounds tonight, 4 on the offensive end, he was really battling in the paint, especially against a guy like Miles Turner. You talked about it, that Gortat screen with Immanuel Quickley. It was like a heaven sent seeing Jakob screens in this game, just pinning guys and getting open drives for his teammates. But him even finishing on the short roll, he had a nice connection with Brandon Ingram. Just having a semblance of that Jakob Poeltl back in the lineup, you could tell how much of a difference it makes for the Raptors immediately.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It adds to that interior, just him being so big, effective, and also talented. But seeing Jakob kind of find his rhythm is also a great sight for the Raptors. They needed that. It's much needed for him as well. But you talked about his ability to get his teammates open, whether it's not just demanding the ball, not through, the traditional post-up as a big, but more so using his body and his activity on the offensive end to create open opportunities by setting these big legal screens, rolling when he needs to roll. I love the fact that he was able to set re-screens, so that shows me he's more comfortable with his mobility. And again, you mentioned this back, but again, having 8 rebounds to me also symbolizes that he's not afraid to mix it up in there. He's being more aggressive. He's trusting his back more. He's trusting his physicality, and it was shown. Having 8 rebounds was great. It was a great effect on the rebounding battle tonight, and I think that was definitely needed, especially with the type of players they had in the paint on the Bucks side. But yeah, Jakob Poeltl's smartness is never going to be questioned, and his effort will never be questioned as well. It's just the fact that he needs to get back to moving a little bit more natural, and we thought that he was doing that today. I mean, his nuances, like you said, if you don't know the game of basketball, just watching it objectively, just seeing the way he's able to have his impact on the game, again, not on the stat sheet, but just his presence, I think is special. And if he's continuing to do that on a regular basis and be more consistent in that department, I think you're going to continue to see the Raptors thrive. So Jakob getting back to his natural self, I think is always great for the Raptors and the fan base, because he's definitely one of those players that we need if we're going to make a late playoff push here at the end of the season.
Yeah, again, you can see just how much he opens things up for the guys around him. I don't think it's a coincidence that Immanuel Quickley has the game that he does, or the fact that Immanuel Quickley takes 19 shots, 11 threes, while coinciding with Jakob Poeltl having his best game back. I don't think those two things are coincidence, just because they both work off each other so well. Whether it's Immanuel Quickley finding Jakob Poeltl in the short roll, or just again Jakob Poeltl screening and re-screening, and a guy like Immanuel Quickley, like a badger out of hell, just running around from side to side around the 3-point line. His off-ball gravity, Jakob Poeltl's ability to screen and re-screen and get guys open, just creates opportunities not just for the both of them, but for guys around them. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter where they're able to generate a 3-pointer for Jakob Poeltl after the Bucks had made a couple shots, and that really gave them some breathing room. Again, a guy like Brandon Ingram gets so much more space, and that dude does not need much space to get a shot off and make a shot. So any extra breathing room from him off a Jakob Poeltl screen is huge. There's a reason why a guy like Jakob Poeltl has missed so much time, but he's still by far leading the Raptors in screen assists. He's top 5 in the NBA in screen assists, despite missing so much time. What he does in terms of opening guys up on the floor is huge for them. And then, like you said, when the ball in his hands as well, the more confident he is, the more decision-making he can do. The Raptors just get that much more of a different look they can offer against teams in matchups. They haven't really had that for pretty much this entire season. So having that down the closing stretch here is going to be really important for them. It's going to be interesting to see. Again, a back injury is one of those things that can linger. So how is it going to respond now? He does get a couple days off before the Raptors play. I will have to see how they manage him on this back-to-back that's coming up. If he plays both games, or they sit him for one, which one do they sit him for? Again, you're matching up against some pretty talented players, whether that's Chet Holmgren on the Thunder or Victor Wembanyama on the Spurs. We'll see how that goes. But you take this as a very big win for the Raptors on all fronts. If we look at how he just performed, even again, the box score numbers weren't huge, but he finishes plus 14 regardless. They won his minutes quite handily.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's a great next action big. And we love those kind of bigs because they put so much pressure on their defender. The defender can never chill. He's not the kind of guy that's going to get a Butler screen, get a UCLA screen and get to the block and just wait and post up. And if he doesn't get it, he's going to fan out to the dunker spot or fan out to the corner. No, Jakob is the kind of guy that's going to go push you in constant DHOs, push you in constant re-screens, ball screens, flat screens, side ball screens. He might set flare screens. He's a guy that's so active. So when you're guarding him, it's so tough because you don't have to worry about what he's doing necessarily with the basketball. But like you said, having that gravity and just being able to get his teammates open just allows for these other bigs to, get tired out throughout the game and have to be put into so many different coverages. So Jakob can be such a threat even when he doesn't have the ball in his hand. And I just love to see him continue to get back to his true form because, like I said, it's definitely a blessing to have him on the court out there. And like you mentioned, that great connection between him and Quickley, it's no question as to why Quickley took that amount of shots. And it wasn't because he was selfish or hunting his own shot. It was literally because he was that open. And it was a result of Jakob Poeltl's activity on the offensive end. So if he can continue to rebound the ball at a high level, guard his defender, guard his man in the paint, and also be an interior presence, I think it's going to be a great addition for the Raptors going forward.
Yeah, the Raptors end up winning the battle in the paint 46-42. They win on second chance points 21-11. And literally up until the third quarter, they were losing both of those categories pretty handily. Again, it was their outside shooting that kept them in front for this game. But for them to win that, again, I think it speaks to what Jakob Poeltl was able to do throughout this game persistence-wise and how they were able to just kind of just grind it out with him inside the paint. And that led to positive things for the Raptors. So for them to win both those categories the way they did at the end, I think is a huge testament to the type of game he had. And hopefully you can see more of that. But the Raptors had a lot of really good performances tonight, so I think it's time we hand out our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Yeah, again, I feel like there's probably a clear answer here, but we can show love to a couple guys. Again, they had really good performances off the bench. I believe the Raptors bench finished +8. Sandro Mamukelashvili, 15 points. He goes 3 of 8 from downtown, 6 of 12 from the field. Jamal Shed was a team high +26 tonight, which was pretty impressive. He finishes with 12 points, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds. Brandon Ingram, again, he led the way early with 22 points, 8 of 17 shooting. He got to the line for 6 free throws, made 4 of them, 6 assists and 2 blocks, only on 2 turnovers. Again, Brandon Ingram playmaking. It's just showing up more and more, which I love to see. But the really big number here is obviously Immanuel Quickley, 32 points, 9 assists, and a steal, 11 of 19 from the field. He hits 5 threes on 11 attempts. He had, I believe, 18 points in the second quarter alone. He only scored 2 points in the first quarter, so he had 30 points through the next 3 quarters. Obviously, very important in that second quarter when the Raptors did turn it around. So you can go a couple different ways. I feel like Immanuel Quickley is probably the popular answer here, but if you have to pick, Duane, where are you going with the player of the game?
Definitely calling on foul every time. Got to call on Quick, man. His ability to just be so crafty with the basketball, his floaters, like you mentioned, just skillful, just so much touch, and there's so much work that goes into his game and being able to be effective, not only from behind the three-point line, but also in between the lines. His ability to get into the paint and be crafty, like I said, his pump fakes, getting defenders in the air, getting himself to the line time and time again is such a tremendous asset for the Raptors because, again, when they're not shooting the ball at a high level from the exterior, then putting pressure on the rim and these defenders, putting them in foul trouble, but also getting to the line, I think is a great way to find your rhythm. And Quickly, he was just playing at his own pace out there. Like I said, the swagger is back, the aura is back. He's, hitting shots, he's celebrating, he's getting back on defense, he's talking, he's being vocal, he's being active on the defensive end, he's putting in so much extra effort. So again, you have to appreciate Quickly, who stepped up for when, again, Barnes not being in the game. You know that you have to step up your points somewhere, and Quickly did a great job of that and being aggressive and shooting the ball, not being afraid of the moment, rising to the occasion, knowing that the Bucks are going to employ a zone defense and being ready, shot ready, just having the preparation to mentally be ready, stay ready so that you can affect the game at a high level, I think is very important. And it's a vital thing for a guy like Quickly. And hopefully this can continue to happen, especially with the back-to-back coming up. They're going to need him to continue to play at a high level. But, man, I think this is like the 3rd time he scored 30-plus points this season. So for him to, score at this level, at this rate, I think is very cool to see because he's like another punch or knockout or assistance to a guy like Brandon Ingram, who also had himself a good second half as well.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Immanuel Quickley does lead the way ultimately. The Raptors, again, improved to 34-23. They're 18-10 on the road. They've won back-to-back games. But that pretty much does it for us this time. So for myself, Zulfi, Sheikh, and Duane Notice, thank you to everyone who tuned in live and for those listening the morning after. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. And don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts. We'll be back on Tuesday live after the Raptors host the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder to tip off that back-to-back like we mentioned. So we'll see you then on the Raptors postcast, breaking it all down. Peace.